So as I am recording this video, it is June 16th, and it is officially the off season in the NFL, at least from the Jaguar standpoint. The Jaguars will not report back for training camp until July 24th. So that means that this next 6 weeks is the off season, and there's really absolutely nothing going on in the NFL outside of different players maybe getting arrested. Kind of like only thing that can come up is bad news. So, with that said, I'm still going to pump out content. I want to make videos, I want to keep this channel active, but, it's kind of a time where it's kind of off season mode for video wise. So I kind of put it out there, asked some people what kind of videos they wanted. Some people said they want different lists and a bunch of different stuff, but I think I'm going to take this moment to really go just do random videos that I kind of want to talk about. Just dive into random topics. And that's going to bring up this video today where I'm going to talk about a player in my eyes who, when I look back on their career, I'm just like, that was so weird. I'm going to discuss the player who I think has had the weirdest Jaguars career I've ever seen. And that is former Jaguars running back Carlos Hyde, who actually had two different stints with the team. When people think of Carlos Hyde, they very much dislike him. But I almost wonder, and you can probably form this opinion more at the end once I throw all the facts out there. Do players hate Carlos Hyde, or do they hate the idea of Carlos Hyde? So with that said, we're going to get into it, man. Obviously he played half of a season for the Jaguars in 2018, then a full season in 2021. And to give you a little bit of a history lesson, in 2017, the Jaguars went to the AFC Championship game. I mean, when you think, literally, when I think of 2017 in any capacity, the first thing I think about is that run the Jaguars had, and it was a huge outlier. It's the only season in the last 10, 15 years that has been any bit decent for us, and that's the season that we all talk about, and the Jaguars went to the AFC Championship game. Then in 2018, the Jaguars wanted to run it back. I mean, they brought back pretty much all the same guys. I mean, Blake Bortles returned. You lost Al Robinson, but he wasn't really involved in the AFC Championship game run. You kept the whole entire starting defense with the exception of nickel cornerback Aaron Colvin, who got replaced by DJ Hayden. So you pretty much had the same exact roster going forward into the next season. So the Jaguars are going to run it back. They're going to use the same method of winning that they did in 2017 to 2018, and that is pounding the ball with Leonard Fournette and playing some great defense, causing turnovers and all that stuff. However, the first step of the Jaguars process was Leonard Fournette. And unfortunately, Leonard Fournette began the 2018 season injured. He got hurt week 1 against the New York Giants, which the Jaguars did wind up winning. And we did not see Leonard Fournette for another 3 weeks until we played the Jets in week 4. And then in that game, once again, Leonard Fournette tweaks his hamstring. Then we didn't see him up until the week 10 Steelers game, where the first game where he had 20 plus carries. I mean, if you look at his carry total, 9 carries week 1, 11 carries in week 4. So in the first 9 weeks of the season, Fournette only had 20 carries. That was not a part of the Jaguars' plan. So with Leonard Fournette being hurt, the Jaguars said, we need to do something. We need to bring in a running back. So in week 7, the Jaguars went and traded a 5th-round pick for running back Carlos Hyde from the Browns. Now, the Browns, this was Nick Chubb's rookie season, and Carlos Hyde was actually getting the bulk of the carries over there at the time. They were kind of easing Nick Chubb in, but I think at some point the Browns realized, look, Nick Chubb is the real deal. They also had Duke Johnson, so they had a bit of running backs in their saddles. So they thought, hey man, we can really go out and trade this guy away, and it's almost like a Derrick Henry. It's almost like a TJ Yeldon leaving Alabama early, and Derrick Henry sitting there. It's like, okay, this is for the best because we have a better guy just sitting here behind him. So at the time, the Jaguars started off the 2018 season 3-1. It was a fun start to the season. However, the Jaguars were in a 2-game losing streak when they made the trade, so they're sitting at 3-3. In that 2-game losing streak, they lost to both the Chiefs and the Cowboys, and they were outscored 70-21. And it looked like things were kind of getting out of hand, and the Jaguars made this desperate attempt to get a running back. So that's what they did. 5th-round pick for Carlos Hyde, and really, it was not very good. I mean, it was crazy because with the Browns, Carlos Hyde was getting a lot of carries. He was getting like 19 carries per game. But with the Jaguars, when he looked at the games that he played, he had 6 carries, then 3 carries, then 8 carries, then 10 carries, then 13 carries. That's not really being like featured very much. And at the end of the season, the Leonard Fournette only had 439 yards rushing. Then TJ Yeldon had 414 yards rushing. Bortles had 365 yards rushing. And Carlos Hyde finished with 189 rushing yards for the Jaguars in 2018. It was a disaster. Like, Carlos Hyde never fit in. It didn't ever really feel like he even wanted to be a part of the Jaguars. I think he was salty he got traded from the Browns because, like I said, with the Browns, he was getting 19 carries per game. And then with the Jaguars, it was like he got shipped to this dysfunctional team, and it was a kind of a bad situation for him. And the funny thing about that really just capped off the Carlos Hyde thing was when Carlos Hyde was and Shaq Lawson were getting into it a little bit, and Shaq Lawson put his hands on Carlos Hyde's face mask, because then Leonard Fournette went in there and fought Shaq Lawson, and it was a fight that ensued all the way up until the locker room, where even Leonard Fournette got a can of beer thrown at his helmet. So it was an ugly situation. Leonard Fournette was suspended for 1 game, and after that, the 2018 season ended, and Carlos Hyde was cut in the following offseason, along with Bortles, Malik Jackson, Tashawn Gibson, and this really started the downfall of the Jacksonville Jaguars. If 2018 wasn't already the downfall, it just got worse, and we haven't recovered since. Hopefully we're back now. We'll see once the season gets underway, but obviously right now, we're kind of in wait-and-see mode. But fast forward to 2021, the new era, Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence. Actually, Trevor Lawrence wasn't a part of the team yet, but we had Urban Meyer. We knew Trevor Lawrence was coming in. There was a lot of change happening. So we were pretty excited, reasonably excited. And free agency started. And I know myself, at this point, I'm an impatient Jaguar fan. I'm just like, spend money. I don't care about the process. Just bring guys in here. I want to be better. The Jaguars did not do that in 2021. We thought it might have been happening just with the way Urban Meyer was talking big game, like, oh, this isn't a 2, 3, 4 year thing. We're going to win right now. And I was like, oh my God, I got the goosebumps going. It was exciting to hear all that stuff from the con artist, but it did not turn out to be true. And when free agency started, it was quiet. The first day went by, and we didn't go out and get any of the big names. And then one of the first names that came out was the Jaguars have signed running back Carlos Hyde to a 2-year, $4.5 million deal. And we're like, what? We're bringing back Carlos Hyde, who's like 30 years old now. He's slower. It's just like, that was the move that we made. And then we realized, like, okay, like, Carlos Hyde played for Urban Meyer at Ohio State. Carlos Hyde was also, I think he was drafted by Balky for the 49ers. I'd have to fact check that. But we were like, okay, like, it's not a big deal. It's just like a backup role. He's not going to be, doing much. And then the Jaguars drafted Etienne in the 2021 NFL draft. And it's like, okay, like, he's the RB3. He's buried on a depth chart. He might get 1 or 2 carries a game if he's lucky. We got duped. Etienne obviously got hurt in the preseason, and he missed the whole entire season. And then week 1 of the 2021 season, it was here. We were all really excited, and it was a train wreck, the game in Houston. And when you look at the box score at the end of the day, Carlos Hyde had 9 carries, and James Robinson had 5 carries. What in the world? James Robinson was like the sole bright spot on the Jaguars when they went 1-15. He was like a top 5 NFL running back when it comes to like yardage and everything combined that year. He was amazing in 2020. And you're going to take the best offensive weapon and give him 5 carries. And this was just the start of whatever Urban Meyer had against James Robinson. And he was just like, he was consistently getting carries. He was getting a lot of carries. And these were the amount of carries he was getting. That's what we wanted from Carlos Hyde in like 2018. But, back then he was 28 for the Jaguars. He was 31 this time around. Like, it was baffling. It was baffling the amount of respect they were giving to Carlos Hyde. And then week 13 against the Los Angeles Rams happened. The Jaguars were 2-9 at that time, and James Robinson fumbled on the first drive. And I remember this game because I was actually on a flight from Spain to Miami at the time, so I missed the first drive. I remember I was able to get to my phone once we landed, and there was like 12 minutes left in the first quarter, so I caught the beginning of it. And I'm watching, what happened to James Robinson? Did he get hurt? Why is Carlos Hyde getting all these snaps? And I'm like, oh, James Robinson fumbled, but they're not putting him back in. Like, Jaguars players are making mistakes left and right, and James Robinson is the guy that you want to make an example of. And then we learned later that Trevor Lawrence basically forced Urban Meyer to put him back in when Urban Meyer was shifting all this blame. Oh, that was the running backs coach. You got to ask him. He was the guy that didn't put him back in. Own it, right? But yeah, then that happened, and it was like, oh God, like, get Carlos Hyde out of here. Like, I don't want to see this guy again. And then Carlos Hyde, after the Week 15 game against the Texans, he was put on the IR. And then James Robinson actually tore his Achilles in Week 16. Then in Week 17 and 18, Dare Ogunbowale was heavily featured. And then, boom. 2022 offseason comes. Carlos Hyde is cut, so his 2-year deal turned into a 1-year deal. And we're sitting here saying, like, why Carlos Hyde? But I got to ask you guys something. Like, with all that said, when we look back at the Carlos Hyde stuff, do we dislike Carlos Hyde, or do we dislike the idea of Carlos Hyde? I know me personally, I probably dislike the idea of him. Now, he was more to blame in 2018 because it just felt weird, and maybe he wasn't into it in 2018. But in 2021, his role wasn't supposed to be much. He was supposed to be an RB3, but, Urban Meyer loved him, and he even said that once Urban Meyer got hired to the Jaguars, he knew he was going to be a Jaguar. I don't know how truthful that is, but he said that. So I'm just sitting here like, man, what a weird career from a Jaguar player. And I know for me, in my time watching the Jaguars, this was the weirdest Jaguars career of any player. Just the way he was brought in, the way he was used, and the way he had 2 stints with the Jaguars. I mean, usually players, when they come back for a second stint, it's like, oh man, we got this guy back, reunion. This guy, I was like, what? What are we doing? So that's all I got, man. I just wanted to kind of go into that. That's going to be one of my mini off-season videos where I go off the cuff and make a bunch, just make different things that might be interesting and fun to watch as, we go through this off-season. And before we know it, we'll be watching our Jaguars on Sunday. Less than 3 months, the regular season. So close yet so far away. But with all that said, thank you guys for watching. Go Jags. You guys watched the whole video. Really appreciate that. You guys can subscribe to the channel for the best source of Jaguars news on the YouTube platform. Also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at UCF_Jaguar. And you can become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month for exclusive channel content. Thank you guys, and go Jags.